Good morning, evening, afternoon, or whenever you might be watching this. My name is Professor Ferrero, and welcome back to U.S. History, 1877 to the present. We are getting towards the end. We are making it to the 80s. Rubik's Cubes, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters. What a time to be alive. I know most of you probably think I was born in the 80s. That is not true. I'm a 90s kid. Anyway, so last class we covered the 1970s. We talked about how at the beginning it was riding high off of the post-war boom, post-World War II boom, and it's all going to come crashing down. All of the liberal policies of the 1960s and 70s finally came crashing down. Too much spending had taken place. America had been too stretched thin, meddled in too many other foreign affairs. We had taken a weak stance on a lot of international policy, and because of that, it's all going to come crashing down on President Jimmy Carter, the Democrat. Jimmy Carter's going to have to deal with stagflation. He has to deal with the OPEC embargo. Remember, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And on top of that as well, he's going to deal with the Iran hostage crisis. So, if the 60s and the 70s are a period of intense liberalism, the 80s is definitely going to be the backlash against all of that. The unfortunate thing about American politics is it's a pendulum. It tends to swing back and forth. You get several years of a lot of very, very liberal policies. People get angry. Things don't get well, and it swings back the other direction with a lot of conservative policies. Conservatives make a bunch of mistakes, and it swings back the other direction, and it just continues on and on. So, the 1980s, the conservative backlash. So, let's go ahead and get started with that. Our president for virtually the entirety of the 80s is going to be this gentleman right here, Ronald Reagan, who's remembered as one of our best presidents in recent American history. I will say maybe in the last 10 years or so, his image has kind of come a bit more into question. Ronald Reagan had originally been an actor in Hollywood. However, he is going to come to office after a conservative backlash against the 60s and the 70s. Again, one of our most beloved presidents. Ultimately, he's going to push the United States to reinvigorate its economy. If you remember, under Carter, there was stagflation. Unemployment was high. The economy was really, really bad. And on top of that, too, inflation was running high. So what does Nixon do? He encourages the American giant of industry to reawaken. Basically, he pushes America to embrace the fact that it has the ability and the capacity to be an industrial powerhouse. Reagan is going to be one of the main reasons that the Soviet Union falls as well. He takes a very, very aggressive approach, a very peace through strength approach to foreign policy. Ultimately, he's going to be known as a president who's going to cut a lot of government spending. He cuts welfare programs because they are bleeding the country dry. However, like many modern Republicans, he says that he likes to cut things. He likes to cut some things, but not others. He's going to ratchet up American military and spending. He increases the amount of spending in U.S. defense as well, and he's also going to fix the stagflation that plagued the Carter and Ford administrations. So, let's go ahead and talk about Reaganomics. This is the big economic policy that he's known for. Obviously, it's nicknamed after him. You see presidents past him do this as well. Joe Biden tried to do the same thing with Bidenomics. The unfortunate thing about Bidenomics is it failed, so it wasn't remembered too fondly. Reaganomics is going to argue for tax cuts and fewer regulations. Reagan is very, very hands-off. He's laissez-faire. Put more money in people's pockets, and people are going to be willing to invest that more. Reagan believes also in trickle-down economics, that if the rich get richer, so would the poor. A lot of people like to criticize this and say this is not true. A lot of people like to praise it and say that it is. I'd kind of deem it as a half-truth. Under capitalism and under free markets, poor people have gotten a lot richer. Quality of life now here in 2025 is a lot better than it was back in 1970 or 60 or 50 or the 40s or the 30s. Quality of life has improved. The lives even of poor people have improved quite a bit. However, wealth disparity does tend to get exacerbated as well. You have really, really poor people, and yes, they're living better lives than any time in human history, but you have ridiculously rich people as well. Ultimately, again, he's going to cut a lot of funding for welfare programs. However, he drastically increases that military spending. He's going to fall into that modern conservative trap of cutting money one place and spending it somewhere else. Reagan does not lower the deficit, and he does not lower the national debt, even though he campaigns as an economic conservative. Reagan's economic policies do work to curb inflation, and it does stop a recession. However, many critics point out that Reagan does very little to fix wealth inequality and even exacerbates it, which is true. Now, granted, Reagan never did run saying that he would fix that, but if you are somebody who really doesn't like wealth disparities, it's understandable why you would criticize Reagan. So, here you have a political cartoon. Take a moment, pause it, break it down. As you can see, Reagan, he is money Santa here. He's throwing out money all over the place. Star Wars program. That was a nickname for a program that Reagan had started. Basically, he wanted to put satellites up in space that could shoot down missiles. It mockingly got named Star Wars by the opposition. And again, you can see here, Reagan is just blowing money, not on welfare programs, but on military spending. And really, that military spending is going to help end the Cold War, but, cuts to welfare. So not always great. Reagan's also really known for his war on drugs. This is probably the biggest area where in recent history he's gotten a lot more scrutiny. His war on drugs, throughout the 1960s and 70s, the U.S. had a drug epidemic. Many combatants who are going to come back from the Vietnam War are addicted to drugs to help cope with the PTSD, and also they just do a crap ton of cocaine while they are in Vietnam to help, with combat. 1 in 5 high school students are taking drugs illegally at this point, and because of this, tons of money is going to be poured into both support and law enforcement. He isn't just giving money to the police, he is also giving money towards helping these people get better. However, as when we declare war on vague concepts such as the war on poverty or the war on terror, it tends not to work in the long run. We still have a pretty big drug problem in the United States. We arguably have a lot worse of a drug problem today in the United States than we did back then. The drug most targeted at that time is going to be crack cocaine. The unfortunate thing about crack cocaine is it disproportionately is prevalent in African American communities. So, even though Reagan isn't explicitly targeting black people, his policies are going to disproportionately affect them. Because, again, crack is most prevalent in black communities. Crack is going to run rampant through black communities, destroying families, and law enforcement is going to arrest many more. It isn't just adult men who are addicted to crack. Moms are, kids are, even babies are addicted to crack because their moms are taking it whenever they are pregnant. The babies are getting it in their system, and babies are literally going to be born with withdrawal syndromes. Their body is having a negative response because it doesn't have crack in it. These are going to be known as, a bit derogatorily, crack babies. So again, this drug is destroying the African American community. And then what's left of the African American community is getting arrested. You're going to see a lot of families broken up due to the war on drugs and also just the prevalence of the drugs themselves. Even if Reagan hadn't gotten involved, you still have a crack epidemic in black communities. And you can see here, this political cartoon is pointing out the racial undertones of the war on drugs. The message of the war on drugs is black and white, calling out the black guy for doing drugs, but it's because he's doing specific drugs that the white guy isn't doing. They're both doing drugs. They should both equally be arrested, but the war on drugs is disproportionately going to affect African Americans, as well as the consequences of crack cocaine disproportionately following on African Americans. So it's a double whammy. They have to deal with the law enforcement side of it, and they also have to deal with the addiction side of it. So, finally, Reagan's foreign policy. This is a bit of a shorter lesson here. Reagan's foreign policy, this is probably the best thing about Ronald Reagan. He's going to handle the Iran hostage crisis. He's going to get it solved. However, he does have some iffy spots to it. His big iffy spot is going to be the Iran-Contra Affair. These are going to be secret operations where the government is going to send weapons to known enemies and aid rebel forces. However, Reagan's going to deny any knowing about it, and he's able to distance himself from it. Ultimately, he's going to be use very persuasive rhetoric, really, in terms of presidents of the last maybe 70, 80 years that are the best speakers. It's going to be Kennedy, Reagan, and Obama. Very persuasive, makes sense. He comes from a Hollywood background, very persuasive rhetoric in terms of the Cold War. During the 80s, the USSR is going to start opening itself up to American products. So you start seeing things like Coca-Cola and Rubik's Cubes and washed jeans. All of those things are going to start showing up in the USSR, and it's going to show the power and the prosperity behind capitalism. It's going to start kind of weakening the Soviet Union. He's also going to invest in new technologies such as the Strategic Defense Initiative. Again, that's those satellites up in space that are meant to strike down any missiles coming to the United States. It mockingly gets nicknamed Star Wars, but if you ask me, that's a pretty cool nickname, even if you are mocking it. Ultimately, too, Reagan, even though he is kind of slowly weakening the USSR behind the scenes, he is going to keep a very positive relationship with his equivalent in the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev. Reagan himself visits the USSR several times, and he is going to call for the teardown of the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall, we talked about it back when we were talking about the beginning of the Cold War. It was a symbol of the Cold War. It was a symbol of the division between the Eastern communist European countries and the Western capitalist European countries. Cut straight through the heart of Berlin. It cut families in half. It cut a community in half. And in the 1980s, Reagan is going to call on Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And it is done in November of 1989. Technically, Reagan isn't president at that point, but he gets all of the credit for it, and I think all of the credit for it is due him. And ultimately, again, even though it's after his presidency, the USSR is officially going to disband in 1991, which isn't all that long ago when you think about it in terms of history. Your parents, or maybe even you yourself, were born before 1991. So, Reagan, he's attributed with ending the Cold War, I think somewhat correctly so, and that's why he's remembered as one of our better presidents. Here is Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev in one of his visits to Moscow in 1988. I'm going to post a clip of the video below of Reagan calling for the teardown of the Berlin Wall. This is going to cement his close relationship with Soviet Union Mikhail Gorbachev, and here we have it in November of 91, the symbol of the Cold War and communism. It's going to be completely torn down in 89, and the Cold War is going to fall in 91. So, with all of that being said, we have finished the Cold War, and we are heading into the modern era, into modern political issues, into the war on terror, 9/11, and it really leaves the U.S. with a question coming out of the Cold War. During the Cold War, the U.S. had a very clear objective in mind: stand against communism. We had a clear enemy, and because of that, that united us around our core principles of freedom and equality and prosperity and libertinism. Yet, since then, we haven't had a clear foreign opponent. And that, in large part, has led to a lot more division since the late 90s, or since the 1990s, moving into the 2000s, the 2010s, and even the 2020s. We live in a post-Cold War United States. We don't have a big, clear enemy. Who is it? Is it China? Is it Russia? Is it Iran? who is it? And because of that, we are at our throats in a way that we've never been before. So I ask yourself, what ought the U.S. stand against now? We haven't really had a clear answer in the last 35 years. If you have any questions, please go ahead, write them down. I will answer any that you have during class. If you aren't in one of my classes, please be sure to leave a comment down in the comment section below. If you liked the video, please be sure to like it. If you like my videos, please give me a subscribe. I'd appreciate it. If not, no worries. I still hope that you have an excellent day, and Ferrero out. Peace.